And so unfortunately, what happened was that I lived with my father, and that's when, he kind of turned his sights on me, really, in a big way. And he wanted to make me, he said, Raymond, you're not going to be a gay faggot, piece of shit, nobody. You're going to be great. So how do you walk? How do you talk? How do you eat? And a lot of the time, we would have these, I mean, in some ways, it's like a struggle session where he would have me stand 4 hours in one spot. If I moved, I get slapped. And I would scream at the top of my lungs, you are God. I want to be a God. I must listen to you. And we would also talk about things like, I mean, my dad was very smart. He had memorized the DSM. It must have been 4 then or 3. He memorized it, and he would diagnose all of his students with like this thing and that thing. And of course, I had many diagnoses too. And he was just like, "Hey, you gotta fix yourself from all this crap. You know, you gotta fix yourself, and this is the way to do it." And so, and there was also, of course, beatings, but I really preferred beatings because they were done, and then he'd usually leave me alone. But
Ironic,
standing
isn't it?
there,
Yeah,
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 but standing there and seeing those eyes, and when I think about evil, when I think about true evil, it's this. There's a banality and a pleasure in the banality because what he was really doing was killing the kid,
yeah,
destroying the child
yeah,
to make something else,
yeah,
something stronger, yes,
yeah.
maybe
Sort
also
of trying to
totally
make an
broken.
orc. That's what he's
That's
trying to do.
right.
He's trying to make an
That's right.
orc.
That's right. And you can imagine that in a pagan world where the whole society believes this, what does that society look like?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it's inhuman,
yeah,
but you win battles.
yeah.
You're the top.
You
You
have an
eat the
orc army.
most.
Yep.
You eat the most. You got the biggest tents, the sharpest knives.
Yep.
You do own your reality. You do manifest your reality
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
like that in
Yeah.
one respect. So, I just really, I feel like I understand. And I know that there are people that have gone through way worse stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
thank God he was never sexual with me or anything like that. But,
Yeah.
you know, um, that was really difficult.
Yeah.
And that lasted for about 3 years until finally he beat me enough to hurt my arm and stuff. And I called the police as a 9-year-old kid, and they
And the
took
courts
me.
suddenly
And
wake up and like, oh, I guess we kind of messed
oh,
up a little
you would
bit.
think though, Paul, that
Oh
they would wake
no.
up. You would think that they would wake up, but they didn't wake up. They woke up a little bit. What they did was give custody to my mother, but I still had to visit him every weekend with my brother because it was a misunderstanding. He had all of this stuff, accident hurt. His mother is psychotic. She's implanted all of this stuff in his head about what actually happened. Blah blah blah. I mean, I'm abbreviating because it's hard to believe how crazy it
Yeah.
is. But I mean, you think of it like, how did something in the Catholic Church go the way that it did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
how does it happen at schools
Yeah.
and where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this could never happen.
Yeah.
These people are crazy. This woman is obviously off a rocker,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
with an accent and can't hold down a job because she's taking care of 2 kids. So, living on food stamps and stuff like that. So, and all the money she did make going to lawyers to fight for her kids, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that lasted for a couple more years until finally um, he beat my younger brother up one day, and I called the police again. He was actually basically drowning him in our pond, and I called the police, and that was finally enough to where the courts granted. Oh, but you'd still think something would happen, right?
Yeah. Like a
But
restraining
no, he
order.
still had visitation rights. But we had to have a guardian ad litem with us when we
Yeah.
went.
Yeah.
And that's when he never saw us again because he made the decision never to see his two kids again. You know, he made a decision. Now, I'm cutting out a lot of stuff. He had other children with other people, his students. So I have a number of other siblings of various ages that are, um, that are under his web to this day. But it really puts into perspective how people can really get away with things if they have the will and the manipulatory power and a system that really doesn't care about the the spirit,
Yeah.
but only cares about the letter
Yeah.
of the law. And I really
Yeah.
feel like, especially in certain areas, I know it's better. I'm sure if you're a rich kid in the middle of like, in the middle of Princeton, you're gonna have a better time, right, with that kind of stuff. But if you're in the middle of nowhere country, where yeah, I mean, like the town that was close to us, I was in the middle of the country, but the town that was closest to us, Centralia, was at one point the meth capital of the West Coast. You know, so like this is just like where people just go and sink into the black hole, right? Beautiful. I think Washington State's one of the most beautiful places. There's the veneer of beauty, but the reality is much worse. So finally, my brother and I were with my mother, and you know, to give you an idea of what she did, through this whole time, she was fighting for us, and then one day she just was like, you know what, I'm going to go to a church. I remember my mother, Lutheran. There there were no Lutheran churches like anywhere 100 miles from where we were. So she went to this small little non-denominational Bible church. She was living in a trailer at that point with me and my brother. And she went, and I remember distinctly the first time we went, and she put in, because she only had a quarter, and she put in a quarter to the giving basket. And that day we had three full boxes of food on our doorstep,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Somebody saw.
Yeah.
And they knew you guys had need.
Yeah.